Okay, there are three types of people. And the first is the person who eats when they are hungry. They see food as the means to satisfy hunger. That means that you get hungry, you eat something, you don't really think about what it is, but you eat something to satisfy that hunger, and then you forget about food, and then that cycle repeats itself. The second type of person is the person who maybe they just started exercising, like they play football or tennis or they go to the gym or whatever, and now they're slightly more conscious about how what they eat affects their physical performance. So they'll start prioritizing things like protein, and they'll start looking more into the macros of things. You'll see them like doing macro calculations or reading the boxes of something. And the third type of person is the person who has realized that every process within your body costs something. Every process that your body carries out does not come for free, and it costs something, and where that fuel to do the thing is coming from is from your food. And in this video, I'm going to explain to you how you can become more like that third person, and how you can use food as fuel, as a cheat code, essentially, for being far more productive and focused than any of your peers, and being far more efficient in studying and learning and achieving far more than you ever would have. Really quickly, I think it's important to know I'm not going to go into a huge amount of scientific detail about the contents of this video. The reason for that is because it's not really relevant to you, and I don't have all day. Okay, the first and most important thing that you need to know is to understand what your brain actually runs on. Again, like I said, every single process in your body has some kind of cost. Nothing is free. So your brain actually runs on something called glucose. Okay, I'm sure you've heard of that, and i.e. sugar. So your brain literally runs on sugar. And actually there is something else that your brain could run on called ketones, but I'm not going to speak about that in this video. And the reason for that is because I'm actually going to upload a video the day after this one is uploaded, where I'm going to go into far more detail about ketones and ketosis and how you can actually use that instead. And that is especially important and relevant if you are fasting during Ramadan. So stay tuned for that by subscribing to the channel. But anyway, for now, we're talking specifically about glucose. Okay, so your brain runs on glucose, it runs on sugar, and this is obviously absorbed into your body by the foods you eat. So I'm sure you know that glucose comes into your body through something, a category called carbohydrates, okay? And carbohydrates serve two functions. They kind of have two modes, the fast and the slow. And I'm sure you know a lot of this already, but it's going to be important for later. So the two modes are essentially, think about it like a car engine. You have the main fuel source that you use like basically as the backup throughout the day, and in short bursts you might have this boost, this turbo boost that you can inject into the car, and it just flies, but only for a short amount of time. And that's essentially the same way that carbohydrates work in your system. You have fast digesting carbohydrates and you have slow digesting carbohydrates. The function that they carry out is still the same. They're still essentially kind of like drip feeding your brain the glucose, because your body is essentially taking that carbohydrate in there, extracting the glucose from it, and they're giving it into your brain in a very basic sense. So the only difference becomes then that the fast carbs extract more easily, and you can get that sugar more easily, and it comes into your brain more quickly. Whereas the fast carbs kind of are drip fed throughout the day for a steady supply. Okay, so now that we understand that glucose and carbohydrates rather are the brain's main fuel source, there are actually two considerations that we have to also have in mind going forward. The first is the speed of digestion, and the second, and this is actually something that nobody considers, and it is digestion itself having a cost. But okay, the first thing is the speed of digestion. Now, the main thing that you should know for this is that whatever comes quickly is lost quickly. So when you have a fast carb source that is absorbed extremely quickly, like let's say the extreme case is you take literal pure table sugar and you just spoon it into your mouth. Now, technically you are getting a lot of glucose very quickly, and that actually will be used by your brain, by the way. So your brain will use this glucose for maybe 30 minutes or so, and it will be extremely high operating. It will just be, you'll be able to do, this is the sugar rush that people describe. And after that 30 minutes, you'll have something called the sugar crash. And the reason for the sugar crash is because your body releases something called insulin. Again, I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty details of it, but the key thing to remember is that whatever comes quickly, whatever is absorbed too quickly will be crashed equally as quickly. So the target then becomes to slow digestion enough that you have a steady curve, that you have a steady energy supply going to the brain. The way you do this is by pairing the carbohydrates, the sugars that your brain actually needs with something that is slow to digest. So even though it's only the sugars that your brain needs, because you want to slow the digestion, you kind of have to wrap it in something that is going to take longer for it to digest so that your body doesn't go through it instantly. And the two main sources of this, of course, are protein and fat. Fat especially is extremely slow digestion. Fiber as well. So a very quick practical way you can do this, for example, is pairing a piece of fruit like a banana with some kind of protein source and fat source. And it's actually better to do this with some kind of source that has both at the same time. So let's say dairy is very good for this, cheese or milk or yogurt, or perhaps some kind of meat with some amount of fat. And the reason for this is that when you have a dedicated fat source, it's obvious, it's a lot easier to add too much, and fat is kind of your secret weapon. It can slow your digestion too much to the point where you become sluggish. Now, the other factor that you should take into consideration is the cost of digestion itself. This is something that nobody takes into consideration. Right now, you probably know people that just go for lunch midway through the day and they'll have some kind of big lunch, and then they'll be yawning all day and they'll be tired and they will not be able to do anything. This is because they don't understand how digestion works. Digestion, like I said, everything your body does has an associated cost with it. And digestion is not only has a cost, but it's actually one of the most expensive things that your body can do at any given point. So you need to take that into consideration. And what that means in practice is that you never want to have something that is extremely slow digestion when you want focus or to be doing things within the day. The larger slow digestion meals should be eaten once you don't mind that drop off anymore. For example, for dinner, you could have something if after dinner you weren't planning on doing some kind of deep focused study session. But then around your study sessions, what you need to instead do is kind of have these micro feedings of these different little boosts, these little turbos that you're giving throughout the day to your body. For any of you that know a little bit about like macros and tracking macros, a good way you can keep note of this is, obviously this will vary person to person, but as like a kind of standard baseline, you could have 25 grams of protein and 35 grams of carbs, 25 of which would be sugars. So a really nice, easy way to get that is one banana has, I think, exactly that carb profile, 25 grams of sugars and 35 grams of total carbs. So that's perfect. Paired with some protein source. So ideally a protein source with a small amount of fat. And if not, if you have something like lean chicken breast, you could add a couple walnuts or something like that, like a dedicated fat source, but try and keep that quite low. Okay, and then you need to understand when to time these things, because even though you can try and minimize the effects of digestions, you can't actually avoid it entirely. So what you're going to do is have these micro feedings half an hour before you want to do a task. And to be honest, some of these will be more filling than others. Depending on the protein content and how slow you kind of adjust that thing, you can actually make it last longer or shorter depending on whatever you need. So for example, if you needed some kind of very quick energy, you may reduce the protein slightly and up the carbs slightly. And if you needed it as a solid breakfast that you knew you weren't going to eat again for another, let's say, 4 hours or so, then you may stick to that kind of baseline of the, maybe up the protein slightly to 30 grams and stick with 35 grams of carbs. So yeah, that's everything I had to say for this video. Again, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned because I will be releasing a separate video about ketosis and ketones and how to study effectively when fasting. That one's actually very interesting, and you can get very productive when you utilize ketones. I hope you enjoyed that video. Thank you and have a nice day.